So again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining our webinar on effective engagement with SMS marketing. Again, thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us. I'd just like to start off the top to thank you for that. But if everyone's ready, we can begin. So who are we? So I know a lot of the people on the call. I've worked with them. I'm Brad Penwarden, so I'm Director of Products here at Munvo. And I'm joined today by Kevin Boutin and Valerie Lim from Twilio. And we're going to talk to you all about a lot of the value today of SMS marketing and what it can do for you. So to those of us who don't know myself or Munvo and haven't worked with us before, so we're a marketing solutions system integrator. We work primarily with Adobe, Unica, and SaaS products in North America and Europe, and we've been around for about 15 years now. As well, we develop complementary products designed to meet some of the pain points we hear from our clients, primarily integrating with these tools. But today, we're really trying to focus on SMS marketing, why it should be used and how it can be used effectively for your marketing initiatives. And that's why we have Twilio with us today. And actually, that's why my friend Kevin and Valerie are with us to kind of help us talk about that. So I'd like to pass it off to Kevin here, and he can introduce Twilio and himself.
Perfect. Thank you, Brad. So just to give everybody a quick introduction, so I am a partner account executive here at Twilio, and with me is Valerie Lim, who is our partner sales engineer. And the two of us act as the liaisons between the partnership between Munvo and Twilio. What do we do specifically at Twilio? We're a cloud communications platform as a service company. We were founded in 2008, and we're based in San Francisco, California, but we have multiple offices in North America and also on the Eastern Hemisphere in Australia. And what we do on our core platform is we allow software developers and really any programmable employee to make and receive phone calls, send and receive text messages, perform virtually any communications experience that you can think of using our web services APIs. And to Brad's introductory point, the purpose of this webinar, of this engagement experience with everybody that took the time to join, is to really talk about our flagship communications channel and our flagship engagement API, which is SMS. And there's some research that third-party analysts have been doing over the past few fiscal years, and some of these slides will powerfully show some of that data that we've been starting to gather and be made aware of regarding SMS as a means. And it's been many years in the making. So everybody from Open Research to Gartner to Forbes has predicted for many years now that SMS will be the dominant way to interact and communicate, not just with consumers, but with customers and businesses holistically. Here's an interesting slide that really speaks to the power of the smartphone, and that not just within communication engagements with SMS, but just also with app engagement. The average person across the world has somewhere between 30 and 40 smartphone apps that they actually use, and typically over double that for apps that are actually downloaded onto their smartphones. So we are living in a very end-user-centric form of communicating by leveraging messaging and the apps on our smartphones. And the new generation, which is up and coming, that we need to really start thinking about how to be engaging with, the millennials, 66%, so 2/3 of every millennial on planet Earth prefers to be reached out by either SMS, messaging, or social media apps. That's just the way they prefer to communicate. And also, the general consumer, a little over 4/5 of the general consumer keeps their SMS notifications switched on. That may seem like a quick data point to cover, but what this really means is that if you are able to reach out and connect with an everyday consumer or even a mass group of people that you're trying to message, the odds are very good that they will get the message via some kind of notification setting, because most of us have our notification settings switched on so that we don't miss any SMS messages coming to our phones. And then this is really, it's not so much even a technology shift as it is a human shift in the way humans prefer to communicate. About 10 to 15 years ago, the trend was in social media platforms, Facebook obviously being the most powerful and known example of that. Facebook is in and of itself a platform which allows you to do a lot of different things, communicating being one of them, but it's not the central focal point of having a Facebook login necessarily. And even though there are 2.7 billion social media users out there on various platforms like Facebook, you can see that almost 1 billion more people are now leveraging messaging apps as end users. So the rise of messaging is actually a holistic shift in how human beings are now starting to connect with each other. And it's obviously even now more predominant than how we communicate on social media platforms, which is something that you just can't ignore anymore. And then as far as mobility is concerned and how we do business mobilely, the m-commerce landscape only continues to grow, and these numbers are pretty astounding. Over 685 billion hours are spent in social and commerce apps all of last year. And then this stat may not be something that we're all too proud of, but the facts are what they are. 3 hours on average we spend on our mobile phones as far as the average user is concerned. And then of the people that have smartphones, 90% have access to the internet and access the internet primarily through their mobile phone, their smartphone device. So these are examples of just how the accessibility is nonstop, and it's only continuing to grow. And the best way to reach out to people and to do business with people is honestly through their smartphone, and that's what these numbers are indicative of. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the customer journey. So consumer concerns, there are actual concerns for the conversational economy, which is basically saying for how you would interact organically through the SMS medium, and some concerns that a general consumer has around the conversational economy and how you reach out to engage with end users is the first thing they'll ask is, where is this message coming from? Can it be trusted? Why am I receiving it? And then also, based on that interaction, how is my data going to be used after the fact? If I reveal some information about myself, or I'm taking a survey, or I'm indicating that I'm going to be somewhere at a certain time, how is my data going to be used moving forward by that entity that sent me that transaction, that message? And then lastly is, can I get the information on my terms? Nobody likes it when we get a random phone call from a spam caller or a random text message from a group that we've never had any interaction with and never done any business with. So the idea of having it be trusted, having your data, having a known idea of why your data, how your data will be used, and then getting the information, getting the messaging on your terms so that it's not coming as a surprise to you, are all very valid concerns that we need to be aware of if we are to engage with our end users and our customers and businesses via this channel. So some lessons to take away from the conversational economy and some best practices that you should take into account when taking into consideration some of those three pretty critical concerns. Number one is personalization. We all prefer communications that are personalized to how we are perceived and how we're communicated with. Things like history, pre-identifying information to save time. And next slide. And what is personalization? So personalization involves it involves using your name, maybe some demographic information, where you're located, your preferences, needs, interests, behavioral attributes, so that those communications are customized to be reflective of you and who you are. And in general, there was a third-party analyst that took a survey this year, and in general, 3/4 of people like their communications to be personalized, and that shouldn't come as a surprise to most of us, but it's still a good validator that a personalized message is far more impactful than a generic non-personalized message. And next one kind of goes hand in hand with personalization. If you follow the first best practice of personalizing, it's most likely going to be pretty relevant information to the end user that you're communicating with. But you want the information that you're sending to have some sort of purpose and impact and relevancy for wherever that person or that customer is in their buying stage or their customer journey. And you want to make sure that those communications are delivered at the right time so that they're relevant. Some critical moments of influence, just taking the example of a pretty common use case that most humans do, which is traveling via an airplane. Most of us have to, at some point or another in our lives, fly. And so some critical moments of influence, just for example, would be a chat service where you're asking your airline to offer direct service from San Francisco to Singapore. Another example would be getting some self-help pre-flight so that you can talk to somebody or get a message from some kind of therapist or somebody who can help you get calm and get over that anxiety or that fear of flying. Logistics, being able to book a flight on an airline based on a limited travel schedule and getting the messaging help for that. And then also just commerce in general, just comfortability of the flight itself. You need to buy a new neck pillow before the flight, and perhaps the airlines can accommodate you via messaging to your consumers. So just some critical moments during a customer life cycle in a very popular example, but there are use cases across all industries like this, and there are many critical moments in the customer journey for almost any customer experience that you can think of. And messaging is a very powerful way to take advantage of those critical moments of influence. And then finally, trust, something that most of us as end users and as just regular consumers take for granted. However, once that trust is breached, it becomes the top priority for us as people. And so, in other words, communications from a recognized sender that contains verifiable content that's secure, that's encrypted, and that can be trustworthy is critical, or the entire stack of cards falls down. So keeping in mind trust as a validator is of the utmost critical importance. And again, it's not something that we think about but if there is an issue or there's a breach in that trust, everything falls apart. And so communicating trust. Some examples of how you can do that is by having a designated number or a verified profile, greater engagement with an identified sender outside of just a single message that's received. Perhaps you can do more conversational profiling, just as some examples. And at the end of the day, some of this information kind of leads to the fact that customers today are won and lost because of engagement. How you're engaging with them, the relevancy, the timing, the personalization, and the trust with which you are engaging them are really today how customers are won and lost. And unfortunately, in a lot of examples, that is just not the reality. And we're getting messages like this example here, no reply email address or an awkward channel transfer. Those are typically the normal ways that mass communications are experienced and perceived. And so obviously Munvo and Twilio are studying and working to make that reality disappear altogether so that we're communicating in a more personalized human way that's relevant for everybody. And now I will pass it on to Brad to talk about some of the challenges and the use cases around messaging in today's world.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so as Kevin said, why is it challenging? Why are clients struggling to, leverage SMS effectively? And I think a lot of people do see the value, but why is that so? And when I think about that, it's, businesses are struggling to meet customers where they are. Connecting to new channels for a lot of our clients beyond the traditional emails and direct mails is not easy for them. Their new channels are challenging to adapt. They all have their own nuances, and the customer experience on every channel isn't quite the same. For the people who are able to even send basic SMS, the way I've seen it thus far is they're treating it much like an email where fire and forget. But the experience for me as a user is when I get an SMS, that's a two-way conversation. That's something I can engage with and I expect to engage with, and failure to do so really leaves me not looking to work with that channel so much. There's also scale challenges. The scale and volume of messages are just so much greater than you're used to. And that's because it's an inbound channel. Ultimately, people can reply. And if you're trying to do conversational SMS, it's a lot of messages. There's a lot of volume. And it requires a different way of thinking. And scaling that with the traditional tools we're seeing, the marketing automation tools that are out there, it's difficult in the best of cases and often requires a lot of technical and process challenges therein. And what is causing this communications divide? Well, there's three factors here. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, adding new channels, and not just SMS, but any new channel. Often you have new APIs or vendors you need to work with, and these new APIs and vendors require maintenance and development. And I like to think about this as, the what of the channel. What is the channel? What do we use to connect to it? What are we going to do with it? That requires some consideration, and that maintenance and development effort can be expensive at best and sometimes difficult to do rapidly. The second part too is, not all channels are created equal. The customer experience, as I talked about, is different on every channel, and it needs to be considered. So for a lot of our businesses, how does that channel operate, and how do customers interact with it? What are its features? This is something that needs to be considered and to effectively use them. Treating everything as you would email is not the right way to approach it, and you're going to disengage your clients pretty quickly. And so it's important to think about, the how of the channel. What does it offer? And then again, many of our clients and the tools they're working with are just not equipped to integrate with these new channels. And if you're able to in any capacity, it's complex at best. And then there's also the process challenges of why are we using this channel and what are we going to do from a marketing side to use it? Okay, we do want to send SMSs. Why are we going to do it? What are we going to do? What's our value proposition? So working with these enterprise tools and working with marketing teams, it's important to think about the why and how we're going to get it to work with our complex ecosystem that we've spent so much time on. And from the scale side, both on the inbound and outbound messaging, I mean, this slide is provided here just to give you an idea of all the nuances under the hood that are going on when you're sending an SMS and the details that are going downstream. There's a lot of complexity. There's many things to consider. Not all phones are created equal. There's things like character encodings. I might get funny characters showing up on one end versus another. There's rate limiting. There's spam filters from the carriers as well. There's a lot of complexity behind the scenes, and these are all external factors that are outside the challenges that you have internally. So coordinating with these carriers and the technical challenges on each of them is complex. And as well, there's process-related challenges too. If you want to acquire a short code, and a short code is, to those who don't know, a registered 5- or 6-digit number that you can use to send high-volume messaging. That requires coordination with every carrier. Every carrier has to be informed. They need details about it. I mean, this is a complex process as well. So externally, you have technical and process challenges that can make it very hard to adopt and scale up quickly. So what options exist, and what can we do to kind of combat this? And that's actually why we partner with Twilio today. The platform they provide really helps with these technical challenges. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of delivery mechanisms going on. There's a lot of challenges. Just because I sent a message to a valid number doesn't mean it's going to be a reachable handset. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. They help prevent us from having to worry about that. They help us with the scale of this channel so we can focus on our marketing message and effectively what it is we need to send. And you can focus on your marketing needs. And when I think about this and engaging customers across the life cycle, I like to kind of step back now and talk more about how we see people using it, or some common use cases we've seen around SMS and marketing with our clients. And really, when we think about it, there's sort of kind of 4 customer life cycle phases we've seen it being used. And in the early phases, it's mostly for driving growth and acquiring people into a program, usually by offering some sort of promotion or interest campaign. As people move along and get more flexible, they start to use, relevant recommendations on products and informational needs, sort of like educational or timely events. As well, there's post-purchase. Just because somebody's taken some action, purchased a product, we want to keep them satisfied with your brand and what your offerings are. So it's important to kind of follow up with them to make people satisfied, make sure they're satisfied and happy with what you're providing. And then at the end of the day, you still need to reduce churn. Obviously, it's more expensive to acquire new customers than it is to retain an existing one. So finding ways to provide value to keep people happy and keep them comfortable with your brand, because that's what they'll come back to. So if I think of an example across the life cycle for one client. Sorry, the slide's just taking a second to change. Yeah, so this is from a retail client of ours. So this is sort of how they were using the life cycle and the 4 stages. So they offered on the website a promotional opt-in saying, hey, if you'd like a discount or free shipping, please join this program by texting to this number, and you'll go ahead and receive digital offers. So it's a good way to acquire somebody into opt-in for the SMS program and kind of begin that dialogue with them. Then, based on their behavior and what they've shown interest in, they were being followed up with real-time relevant reminders about flash sales and offerings related to a product that they're interested in. So the example that comes to mind here would be like a TV. A TV is for sale. We're looking to move some. They're on discount, and we know you've expressed interest in it. We can offer you a real-time relevant SMS communication, an offer saying, hey, TVs you're looking for are on sale. Here's a real-time discount that you can use right now. Click here to proceed. But then after the fact as well, there's that customer satisfaction. So, tracking packages and giving delivery notices and letting someone, stay abreast of the situation is a great way to kind of keep people satisfied so they're not caught off guard by anything. And then finally, adding some sort of value-added service. So, making sure the customer is engaged. So this could be, if it was a smart TV, a program that kind of says, hey, we noticed you haven't registered your product yet, or you haven't signed on to the service. Here's some instructional manuals to kind of help you get started and make sure you're not having challenges there. And if you are having challenges, here's the support number you can reach out to kind of skip the queue and get started in this process to get set up today. So this is an example of how you could integrate across the life cycle. And this next slide was provided by Twilio, and I think it's from their study mentioned earlier in the webinar. But the one thing I really wanted to call out here is most of our clients are doing transactional email marketing and marketing emails. But the one thing about the SMS is the really high open rate and the really high response rate. If you're doing effective communication through this channel, you're going to get much better engagement from people, and as long as you're treating it properly, it can be quite a powerful channel for you. Much higher, average response rate. We're talking about a 45% rate here versus the teens that we typically see or less from our email channels. And now I'm going to go into some more specific use cases for each of the above. They're from different industries, so it's not just for a retailer. So I'll be jumping around those life cycle use cases, talking about instances we set up recently, just to kind of give you some ideas of what you could do and what people have done with them. Yeah, so the first one is a very common way to get your feet wet. Lots of our clients use this kind of promotional way to get opt-in, and in exchange for that opt-in, they provide a promo. So this is pretty common across all industries of, hey, we'll give you a discount if you join this program, and in return, we provide coupon codes and discounts to a person in exchange for that. So again, a very good way to get your feet wet, low risk, just another channel to offer that. But again, it's not super relevant, not the best use case in the long run. It's just a good way to get started and kind of get comfortable with the process. The next use case I'll talk about is in that kind of product optimization cycle. And this is an example from hospitality. So it's about someone had booked a stay at a resort, and when the person arrives at the resort, they're presented with an option to join a program for their stay at that resort. And for the people who subscribe to that campaign, They were given notifications that were helpful. So if I think about them, they're more like customer satisfaction messages, things like, hey, breakfast is starting at this time, it'll be ending at this time. There's an orientation in the lobby at this time. But it also is an opportunity to do kind of upsell and product optimization, saying things like, hey, there's an excursion, it's snorkeling out at a reef. If you're interested, here's details on pricing. You can sign up here, or you can meet in the lobby for more information. So providing a way to kind of optimize their experience and try to do an upsell and informational campaign at the same time. So this is a very successful one and a really good use case for SMS marketing. The next one I saw fits again between Lifecycle 2 and 3. It's a bit of both. So the first phase was about, this is from insurance, so a copay wallet card. So for people who are on particular drug plans, they were asked a series of qualifying questions to see if they were eligible for a particular coverage card. If they were, and it was relevant, they were actually provided in real time a mobile wallet card so that they could use it immediately at their pharmacist, not having to wait for something to come in the mail. And in doing so and participating in this program, they received a lot of value-added kind of messaging to kind of keep people happy and in line. And these are things like, hey, you're due for a refill. Your prescription is ready, and even usage reminders. You know, this is it's Tuesday. You should be taking the following. So the win-win here, where the customer gets something that can help them manage it and keep it on top of their important pills, but also getting something in real time. And then this one we've probably all seen in some capacity, and it's an example of dynamic support, and it's a great way to kind of reduce churn and kind of mitigate those unexpected events. And this one comes from telecom. And you know, an example might be if I have a home internet plan and I've exceeded, you know, some percentage, we'll say 90% of my monthly download limit. Typically, what you'll see from a lot of people is they'll engage you with an email message that says, hey, you're over your limit, or you're approaching your limit with this many days left in your cycle, FYI. But what this client did is they went a little bit further and they engaged with an SMS saying, hey, you're approaching your limit. Here's some information you could use to help you curb that. So providing some documentation suggesting ways that they could address it and how they could get a bit of support. And as well, offering prompts for things like temporary plan changes for the remainder of the month to increase their download limit, or offering them opportunities to call directly into support if they feel like this is an error or there's something they can do to change it. So it's a good way to kind of engage them, get ahead of the problem so it's not a problem after the fact. Okay. So that's it for me. I just again like to thank everyone for taking their time here. We're going to open the floor to questions. So in the WebEx in the bottom right, there's a chat function. So you can, there's a QA function, so you can ask some questions of us. Yeah, so that's it for me talking. So feel free to ask questions and we'll address those. Thank you. Hi, Debbie, do you have a question? I see that you have a question mark that's popped up. Okay, let's see, it's in the Q&A section. And maybe Simon, you could read those out, the Q&A section.
Read that question. This is Valerie from Twilio. So the question from Debbie is on the use case. How are the customers getting on the lists? Are they all texting in a keyword to the short code?
Yep, so we've seen two ways to engage. Yeah, one is people text a keyword to join the program to opt in. We've seen other people use things like email or more traditional channels to get people to opt into these programs to start that process. So things like email or websites to kind of engage in that. That's the other questions we have here. So there's a question about any limitation on the number of SMS that can be sent in real time. So I can speak to this, and Valerie can as well. It depends on what we're sending the messages from. If you're using a long code, which is more like a traditional 10-digit phone number, the limitation is 1 message per second. So it's not really meant for high volumes. It's meant mostly for, you know, non-real-time processing. But with a short code, the limitation is, I believe, 100 messages a second. Correct me if I'm wrong, Valerie.
That's long codes are meant essentially for person-to-person communications. And as Brad mentioned, they can send a message per second. And short codes, which are typically 5 to 6 digit numbers, can send at rates of 100 messages per second. So this is meant for higher throughput, marketing related messages, notifications.
have a question here about what is two-way communication. So probably a little more, introductory. But yeah, the idea is the idea that I can send replies back to you. So if you think of email, it's traditionally, at least in terms of the real-time nature, a one-way communication where I send something to you, and then not in real time, I can reply, but generally customers are not expecting a response. But when it's SMS, I can ask you questions and you can reply to me in real time, and we can have a dialogue and a conversation. And this is why things like, conversational messaging is so important, because it is a two-way channel and people can reply on these two-way channels and engage with us and answer questions and provide context around that conversation. So it's a very valuable way to kind of have a dialogue. Have you integrated SMS with a campaign solution? Yeah, so we've integrated Twilio with Adobe Campaign. We've been integrated with Unica Campaign as well as SaaS CI, the customer integration platform. And we've used these with Twilio. Again, we're a big fan of the platform. It provides very good integration and is a really great way to kind of connect your existing marketing tools to the SMS and messaging world. And they handle a lot of that complexity for you. Let's see, what's the next question? When a customer has multiple messaging apps on their phone, WhatsApp, Hangout, Signal, etc., how does Twilio identify the right app to send for the communication? So I think these are all treated as different channels, and Twilio offers a kind of like a one-place API to use various messaging providers. So Valerie, you may want to take this one, but at least from a technical standpoint, you have a different endpoint that Twilio hosts that responds to a different channel you'd like to use if you want to use more than just, say, SMS.
Right. So within the Twilio architecture, we have what's called our programmable communications cloud. And this includes our APIs, whether they be for SMS, for sending text messages. We have a Twilio for WhatsApp API that's intended to send WhatsApp messages through the Twilio platform. So we leave it up to our customers and to Munvo for you to implement the specific channel of your choosing for these communications. Thanks,
Valerie. Yeah, and one of the products we've built to integrate your marketing automation tool with these channels is designed to sort of let you pick the channel, whether it's SMS or some other messaging layer, and we're really just serving us as a go-between to manage that. So you don't need to manage the understanding of various APIs. You just need to understand which channel you'd like to communicate with and the details of whom, and then we handle the integration back to, say you're using Adobe Campaign, update your broad log table with details of who was sent what and the status of that delivery, as well as details of all the inbound messages that they've replied to us with if it's relevant. Is the communication automated? That's a little more general question. If you're just using the API in a fire and forget capacity, you can just send one-way messages with, beyond your core start, stop, help type messages. That's it. But you can do this through custom development and try to leverage the API to receive those messages and per channel and the complexity there of integrating to manage that kind of conversational decision tree. Or again, we've provided an SMS gateway product that connects to your marketing automation tool that can kind of allow you to build drag and drop communication trees and integrates back to your marketing solution. We have a question here about, you shared stats about younger consumers' engagement with SMS text. Do you have any data point about the 65+ population and their engagement with SMS?
Sure that we have those data points, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong. Typically, just across the board, we see higher engagement rates with SMS over different channels, such as using email as an example. Whether that's distributed across different age ranges or demographics, I don't believe we have that data currently, but we can take that as an action item and look at this for you.
That's right, Valerie.
And then that might be a good point. Maybe Simon showed the next slide too. If people have questions for myself or Twilio, this is how you can get in contact with us. So Kevin or Valerie. So if you have questions about specific statistics or information, this is just a way so you can get in touch with us. There's still more questions, but it's probably good to put this slide up right now. Here's a question. And this one's probably maybe for you, Kevin or Valerie. What is the client opt-in rate for SMS notifications? Secondly, what is the audience size based on regarding the 98% open rate? So this one, they're probably getting into the stats. We might need to. Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll send the Munvo team, Brad and team, the specific analytics on the data validation that was done to find out that 98% open rate, and get that your way. Have the actual empirical data at this point, right this second.
Yeah. This was all taken from a study, so we can work to share that or provide details. And Kevin and Valerie have that probably as well. Good questions. How cost-effective is SMS versus email? So Valerie, maybe you want to speak to the costs associated with long codes and messaging costs on SMS, for example?
Yeah, go ahead, Valerie.
I'll just speak briefly to it and then can hand it over to Kevin. But with SMS on Twilio, there's a cost associated with a phone number that you'll procure on the Twilio platform. And this may range depending on the region or country that you procure the phone number in. So for example, in the US, a local phone number is $1 per month, and there are associated fees for each text message that is sent and received to and from that phone number. And Kevin, did you want to add more to that?
To say the list price is 0.0075 cents per message sent or received. Again, that's list price, and the dollar for a U.S. local number is also list price, but committed usage, the quantity of number of messages that you're planning on sending, all of that is negotiable.
And maybe Kevin, just to do we know the rough estimate for cost of a short code? I know there's some factors that depend on that in terms of region and also like the value placed on that particular number. For example, 7777 might be more expensive than another, but roughly the cost of a short code.
Yeah, let me.
Yeah, I've had something in the neighborhood of, and I think it varies, but there's I think a one-time fee for setting up, and that's where you have to coordinate with the carriers, and they all have to enable it for you, and then it's something in the neighborhood of around $10,000 a year for that short code being reserved. That's what I've seen, but the numbers may vary quite a bit on there, and that's what I've seen.
Yeah, there is a one-time setup fee. In the United States, the setup fee is $650. There's also an MMS enablement fee, which is a one-time cost of $500. In Canada, the setup fee is a little more expensive. It's $3,000, just based on the carrier arrangements that we have in Canada. And then there are some short code recurring charges. So short code leases and service charges are billed on a or annual basis. And then annual subscriptions receive a discount equal to a month. And then if it's a random number, the annual cost would be $11,000. If it's a vanity number, which is a custom number that's unique and that no business owns at that point in time, the annual cost for the short code recurring charge is $16,500. And then we have also self-leasing options, which is a $5,500 annual cost in the United States. And again, short code is really for mass communications where you're sending, messages per second. So you're really reaching a pretty vast audience, and that's why the recurring charges, setup fees are involved.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. I think we're a fair bit over here, so I really appreciate everyone sticking around and asking some really good questions. Sorry we weren't able to get to all of them. I see there's quite a few questions here still. So if you have questions for myself at Munvo or for Kevin or Valerie at Twilio, yeah, please feel free to use our emails here, and we can carry on that conversation or even set up another call to address any questions and proceed from here. So again, I'd really like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. I know you're all very busy, but thank you.